Hi everyone, this is Christopher versus Timothy, played on the 11th of May. Okay, we've got a Guico piano, main line. Yep, takes, bishop check, bishop d2, knight e4. I'm used to the line where you just take on here and they take back with a knight and then you throw in d5. This is a different line. I remember it was kind of playable, but there was quite a few tricks you got to be careful of. So takes, and then I remember there was a sack on f7 or something. Well, not really a sack. Let's look at the opening book. Yeah, okay, there's two moves here. Queen b3, which was played, is one of them, but the move that actually is the book move is taking with check, because you sack the bishop and then you follow up with the queen fork on these two. And in this situation, what you've done is you've created a weakness. The king is weak. You know, the knight can jump into e5 and go check, and the king has to move somewhere. And you know, where does the king move? According to the book, the king moves here. That kind of looks crazy, doesn't it? But that is the book move, apparently. I mean, king g8 just seems like the place to be, with the idea of eventually trying to push one of these pawns to let the king up and the rook out. But yeah, the queen grabs the thing on b4 here, and you know, moves like queen there, for instance, are interesting. It doesn't stop castling, because castling is the way to stop that. Queen g5 is also, it looks like a book move here. And the idea is if you castle into this, you're running straight into bishop h3, which is obviously not very good for white. He's going to have to give up the exchange by playing g3 and letting the bishop take the rook. So it's an interesting line. Black could play it, but he didn't. He played the queen b3 line. So after knight here, he went, where are we? So we'll just get rid of all these things here. He went queen b3, which is not as good, because it allows black to play something like what he did was queen e7, which kind of defends everything. That looks a bit weak, the queen on the e-file, the same line as the king, to just straight out castling. d5 to me seems like the move that you want to play here. And after takes, you take the bishop, and yeah, I mean, if the queen takes back, you can just castle, and the material's equal, but black's position's perfectly fine. He's got bishop and knight versus two knights. White has an isolated pawn. You got a normal, interesting position here. Yeah, so d5 would be the way to go. Queen e7 was played. Apparently that is a book move, is it? Oh, yeah, there's two of them. d5, which is the main move, and queen e7, which is not considered that good. So after he castles, we've got a problem here, and in the rook pinning the knight to the queen is going to be a massive issue to deal with. So some sort of d5 move needs to be played by black pretty much right away, I think. This would be the way to go it. And after, you know, bishop takes, knight takes, you know, queen takes, knight f6, you're hitting the queen. White hasn't got time to do rook e1 stuff. While the queen's getting out of danger, this king can castle, and everything should be fairly equal, fairly good. I mean, white's got the isolated pawn, but it's a center pawn, and yeah, it's a normal sort of position. But here black castled. Still looks starting to look a bit dodgy. I mean, this rook getting on the e-file straight away is looking very scary. Something like d5 needs to be played, but this knight is in deep trouble. You know, a move like knight d2 or not knight g5, knight d2 or something, or this knight coming here and attacking this. This one looks a bit scarier, because you can follow it up with f3, winning a piece. Whoops. Black played rook e8, and that just loses. You know, a piece is going to fall for sure. I mean, straight away you can the queen is overworked. It's trying to defend the f7 pawn and the knight at the same time. So you can not do that. You can just grab the knight, and after queen takes knight, follow up with the bishop fork here. And you know, after king f8, and then you see what's happening is this knight is on pre at the end of it all. So you don't grab it yet. Get out of it. Okay, so you take here, And yeah, if the knight escapes, the bishop escapes, and white is a piece up. If he takes the bishop, you take the knight, and white is a piece up. So yeah, rook takes knight would have been great. He didn't play it though. He played knight c3, which is also winning. Just piling on the pin piece, and black has got major problems. He tried playing d5, but that doesn't work. You can just take it with the bishop, and this knight is doomed. He took with a knight, which I think is almost as good. This knight is doomed. This knight's on pre. I don't know what black plays here. What if he goes queen d8? You know, that adds a bit of complexity to it. You got two pieces attacking this. What if the queen takes on b4 though? Or knight can take on b4. Yeah, okay, so after knight takes, bishop takes, how does he keep this knight defended? It's impossible. He tried with bishop f5, but you just trade pieces off and then throw in a knight d2 and the bishop's doomed because f3 is coming next move. And that's pretty much what happened. Well, no, it's not what happened, but let's say he defends it. He can't play f5. It's being attacked twice. It's been defended twice. He tried to defend it with queen h4, but that just runs into g3. And, you know, queen g4 is the only move left, which keeps the bishop defended. That just runs into f3. Remember, the queen defends along the third rank. And that's it. Game over. Black has lost a piece, and white will just win easily from here. So, you know, this is, you could just say black got outbooked, but not really. I mean, the main issue here was rook e8. Here, black needed to spend a lot of time, probably as far back as yeah, instead of queen e7, as far back as here, you need to have a long time. The moment you start putting your queen in front of your king like this, and your opponent could just castle straight away, you've got a problem. You've got a massive problem with pins on this line, and white's played it perfectly. It's really good. Rook e8 just does not solve the problems. After rook e8, you can see very clearly that knight c3 piling on the pin piece, and black is toast, basically. So black needed to have a long think here, not just go instant rook here, and try and find a way to sack the pawn back to keep all these pieces safe. So d5 was definitely the move here, hitting the bishop. And, you know, after bishop takes, knight takes, queen here, you've got knight f6. And everything's fine. You can allow your queen to be attacked because the white queen is under fire. And if the queen moves, then it gives this queen time to move, or the bishop to block the line of the rook. That looks a bit dodgy because you're running into d5 sort of ideas. But the engine, I don't know. You probably just move your queen. And black has managed to get into a position where he's not material down. Yeah, you know, if white takes the queen, it's just very simple. Knight takes here. It defends the pawn, attacks the rook. The rook has to go, and this position is equal, if not better, for black, because this isolated pawn is a problem. The queen's off the board. The advantage of having the center isn't so great anymore because you don't have a queen that can develop threats against this weakened black king. So d5 was the solution. Rook e8 just lost. So let's just get to it. Takes. So he played bishop f5. Well done to Christopher. He's found the right moves. Queen h4. He found g3. And now here, I don't know what you do. Maybe you play queen f4 anyway, g4 anyway, and hope your opponent doesn't see f3. According to the engine, queen g4 is the best move objectively. Rather than going back to h6, which is what Timothy did, maybe h5. Because the idea is then you've got this h6 square available. You can do something like rook e6 and try and swing the rook over to h6 and develop some pressure on this king over here. You know, and if this goes here, new variation, you've got moves like rook here, piling on this piece some more, you know, threatening things like f5 and getting your piece back. Now there is a danger though. You can't, yeah, stuff like d5 is a pain. You can't play rook across, can you? Maybe the rook just jumps into f5, f8 or something, and then just look to play rook here next move on h6, threatening the h2 pawn and getting some activity. And if he plays h4, you can maybe answer with g5 or h. Oh no, not h. There's a rook sitting there. f6 and g5. and attacking the H pawn, generating some pressure down the H file. That's what it's all about, getting your pieces to active squares and getting your opponent under pressure. So he played H6, which eliminates any idea of a rook lift and swinging across the H file. And now after knight takes, White's got a very comfortable position. He's just an entire knight up. He just has to try and find a way to swap pieces off. And with an open E file, swapping pieces off should be very easy. All the rooks should just come off very quickly. Black played rook d8. White grabbed the pawn, basically with a sneaky trick, hoping black will take the d4 pawn. I'm not sure what black can do here. There's just no way to generate pressure. The engine's even suggesting swapping queens, which is not a good idea. Maybe rook e7 is the way to go. That way you can answer knight f6 with queen takes. So rook e7 defends a c pawn. You have a rook can come in behind, or something like that. I don't know, but what he did was just falling straight into White's trap, and yeah, GG. So after takes, king here, queen c8. Yeah, I love that move. That's really good. Threatening just rook there, mate. Maybe f5 is needed here to create an escape square. It doesn't really matter, but this just leads to forced mate. King here, yeah, queen h3 check there, and then queen takes mate. No, he went for the imaginative mate with a pawn. I like it. Yep, checkmate with a pawn. Really good stuff. Yeah, the only thing really that got black unstuck with that game was that rook e8 move. The position was very difficult when your opponent's got the center and he's got the rook developed, pinning the knight to the queen. It's very uncomfortable. It requires some incredibly accurate play. If you are going to play into an opening like this, you have to have a long think. The moment you're out of book, and yeah, maybe black knew book all the way to this point, but after this, things just fell apart. Queen there, queen e7. I have a feeling black was out of book around about here. So yeah, I think this line is a much safer line to play. Let's just consult the openings book. You go d5 and then takes, and this is a much safer way to play against the Guaco piano rather than this knight takes e4 line. That's just it's just scary, really scary, and particularly if white knows the bishop sack, and this is not a fun position for black to play because the king is just completely exposed, and it's going to be a problem for the rest of the game dealing with this exposed king and the fact that rook can't get out. It's playable with perfect play. I think black can just get everything out and get to a reasonable endgame. But it's a bit grovelly. I think the other line is a little bit less grovelly. It gives black good chances if you just play into this line here. And this line is a decent line. Gives black excellent chances. Queen b3 is how it works, and then you got knight a5 and queen a4 check. This is, yeah, and then you can just go back here and say, do you want to draw? You can also play moves like c6, but they're very dangerous because after takes, it's a little bit dangerous. This queen's a little bit exposed, so you've got moves like rook c1 threatening to jump it into c5, and this knight is on the brink of being trapped as well with a move like b4. So there is dangers to this line, and a lot of the time you've got to be happy with a draw. But Christopher is a higher rated player, so you should be quite happy repeating forever like this if you want to.
Threefold repetition.
Thank you, program. Okay, yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Rook e8, and he was done. Okay, well, thanks for listening. I hope you learned something from this game. See you all later.